When Marcus Thompson slid the elegant wedding invitation across the table to his ex-wife Sarah at their custody exchange meeting, his smirk told her everything she needed to know. This wasn't an olive branch. This was warfare disguised as wedding stationery. "I thought you might want to come," he said, adjusting his expensive watch with deliberate slowness. "You know, to see how a real wedding is supposed to look. Unlike that courthouse disaster we had." Sarah's hands trembled slightly as she read the invitation to Marcus's wedding to Victoria Ashford, daughter of real estate mogul Richard Ashford. The venue was the city's most exclusive country club. The guest list would include senators, business leaders, and society's elite. And somehow, inexplicably, her name was on it. Their 6-year-old triplets, Emma, Jake, and Lily, watched from the back seat of Sarah's aging Honda, sensing the tension between their parents, but not understanding why Daddy always made Mommy's shoulders sag like that. They had no idea that this moment would mark the beginning of the most extraordinary reversal of fortune their small family had ever witnessed. What Marcus didn't know as he drove away in his new BMW was that Sarah had been keeping a secret so profound that it would transform not just her life, but the lives of everyone who had ever counted her out. 3 years earlier, Marcus had left Sarah for Victoria during the most challenging period of their marriage. Sarah was struggling with postpartum depression after their triplets' difficult birth, working 2 jobs to support the family while Marcus built his construction company. When his business finally started succeeding, he decided he deserved better. The divorce was brutal. Marcus's expensive lawyers painted Sarah as an unfit mother who couldn't provide stability for the children. She lost their house, most of their shared assets, and nearly lost custody of her babies. The judge awarded Marcus primary custody, leaving Sarah with every other weekend and a child support payment that barely covered groceries. "You'll never amount to anything without me," Marcus had told her on the courthouse steps after the divorce was finalized. "You're a high school dropout with no skills. Those kids deserve better than what you can give them." Sarah moved into a tiny 2-bedroom apartment in the city's poorest neighborhood. While the triplets spent most of their time in Marcus's suburban mansion with Victoria playing stepmother, Sarah worked as a night janitor at Hartwell Industries, one of the city's largest pharmaceutical companies. During the day, she took online courses, determined to prove she could provide for her children despite the odds stacked against her. The other employees at Hartwell barely noticed the quiet woman who cleaned their offices after hours. They had no idea that Sarah spent her breaks in the laboratory building, fascinated by the research being conducted there. They didn't know that she had taught herself chemistry and biology through library books and free online courses, driven by a childhood dream she'd never been able to pursue. Dr. Elizabeth Hartwell, the company's lead researcher and daughter of the founder, first noticed Sarah 6 months into her employment. She found Sarah in the lab one night, carefully cleaning around expensive equipment with an attention to detail that surprised her. "You're very thorough," Dr. Hartwell commented, watching Sarah gently wipe down a spectrometer that lesser cleaners might have avoided entirely. "I know how important this work is," Sarah replied quietly. "My daughter Emma has cystic fibrosis. Research like yours gives families like mine hope." That conversation sparked an unlikely friendship. Dr. Hartwell learned that Sarah had been reading scientific journals during her breaks, trying to understand her daughter's condition better. She discovered that despite having no formal education beyond high school, Sarah possessed an intuitive understanding of complex chemical processes that rivaled some graduate students. "Have you ever considered going back to school?" Dr. Hartwell asked one evening as she found Sarah reading a research paper on gene therapy. Sarah's laugh was bitter. "With what money? What time? I can barely afford rent, let alone tuition. Besides, who would take someone like me seriously?" Dr. Hartwell made a decision that would change both their lives. "What if I told you about a research program that provides full scholarships to exceptional candidates, regardless of their background?" For 2 years, Sarah lived a double life. By day, she attended advanced chemistry courses on a full scholarship Dr. Hartwell had helped her secure. By night, she continued working as a janitor to pay for her apartment and visits with her children. The exhaustion was overwhelming, but every time she felt like quitting, she thought about Emma's breathing treatments and Marcus's cruel words. Her professors were amazed by her intuitive grasp of complex concepts. Dr. James Morrison, who taught organic chemistry, later said, Sarah approached problems from angles that PhD students never considered. She had this remarkable ability to see patterns that others missed. Marcus remained oblivious to Sarah's transformation. During custody exchanges, he barely looked at her, dismissing her as the same loser he'd divorced. He was too busy planning his wedding to Victoria and enjoying his newfound social status as her fiancé. The Ashford family connections had opened doors for his business that he'd never imagined possible. "Did you see Sarah when you dropped off the kids?" Victoria asked Marcus after one exchange. "She looked different somehow." "More confident," Marcus laughed dismissively. "Trust me, nothing about Sarah has changed. Once a failure, always a failure." Meanwhile, Sarah was making breakthrough discoveries in Dr. Hartwell's lab. Her research into gene therapy for cystic fibrosis had yielded promising results. She'd identified a novel approach to treating the disease that had escaped the attention of researchers with decades more experience. "Sarah," Dr. Hartwell said one evening, reviewing her latest findings, "this could revolutionize treatment for thousands of children. We need to fast-track this research." The work was groundbreaking enough to attract attention from pharmaceutical companies worldwide. Sarah's name appeared on research papers published in prestigious scientific journals. Offers began pouring in from major universities and research institutions. But Sarah had a different plan. 3 months before Marcus's wedding, Sarah made a decision that would shock everyone who thought they knew her. Using the patent rights from her discoveries and backing from Dr. Hartwell's family foundation, she started her own biotech company, focusing specifically on treatments for genetic diseases affecting children. The business plan was solid. The research was revolutionary, and the funding was substantial. Within weeks, Genetic Hope Solutions was being hailed as one of the most promising startups in the biotech sector. Sarah's story, from janitor to CEO, captured media attention across the country, but Sarah kept her success quiet. She moved into a beautiful home in the city's most exclusive neighborhood, but chose not to flaunt her newfound wealth during custody exchanges. She wanted her children to love her for who she was, not what she could provide. And she had plans for Marcus's wedding that required the element of complete surprise. The day of Marcus's wedding arrived with perfect October weather. The Ashford Country Club was decorated with thousands of white roses and crystal chandeliers. The guest list read like a who's who of the city's power elite. Marcus wore a custom Italian tuxedo, and Victoria's dress had been featured in Bridal magazine. Marcus had specifically requested that Sarah sit in the back row as far from the main ceremony as possible. He wanted her to see everything she'd lost, everything she'd never be able to provide for their children. He imagined her watching in her discount store dress while he married into one of the city's wealthiest families. "I can't believe you actually invited your ex-wife," Victoria's mother, Patricia Ashford, commented as they prepared for the ceremony. "Isn't that rather unusual?" Marcus adjusted his bow tie confidently. "I wanted her to see what she gave up. Sometimes people need to understand their place in the world." As the guests took their seats, whispers began circulating about the mysterious convoy of luxury vehicles arriving outside. 3 sleek black limousines had pulled up to the club's entrance, followed by what appeared to be a security detail. Inside the club, Senator Williams was speaking with pharmaceutical executive David Chen when they noticed the commotion. "That's the Hartwell family's limousines," Chen observed. "I wonder what brings them here today." The ceremony began on schedule. Marcus stood at the altar, basking in the admiration of the assembled elite. The orchestra played as Victoria made her entrance in her $30,000 gown. Everything was proceeding exactly as planned. But Marcus's confident smile began to fade when he noticed a disturbance at the back of the church. Guests were turning in their seats, craning their necks to see something happening at the entrance. Whispered conversations were breaking out despite the solemnity of the ceremony. Dr. Elizabeth Hartwell had entered the church, but she wasn't alone. She was accompanied by 2 other women, one of whom looked remarkably familiar to Marcus, though he couldn't immediately place her. The woman wore an elegant navy blue dress that probably cost more than Marcus's monthly mortgage payment. Her hair was professionally styled, and she carried herself with a confidence that commanded attention. It took Marcus several seconds to realize he was looking at Sarah. But the real shock came when he saw who was with her. Emma, Jake, and Lily walked beside their mother, dressed in outfits that clearly came from the city's most exclusive children's boutique. They looked like young royalty, completely comfortable in the opulent surroundings. The wedding officiant paused as the murmur in the crowd grew louder. Guests who recognized Dr. Hartwell were wondering why one of the city's most prominent researchers was at this particular wedding. Those who followed business news were beginning to recognize Sarah from recent articles about genetic hope solutions. "Marcus," Victoria whispered urgently. "Who is that woman with Dr. Hartwell?" Marcus's face had gone pale. He was beginning to understand that something fundamental had shifted in his understanding of reality. The woman he'd invited to humiliate was being treated with the deference typically reserved for honored guests. As Sarah took her seat, not in the back row as planned, but in the section reserved for distinguished guests, she caught Marcus's eye and smiled. It wasn't a smile of malice or revenge. It was the smile of someone who had found her true worth and no longer needed anyone else's validation to confirm it. The ceremony continued, but Marcus struggled to focus on his vows. His attention kept drifting to the back of the church, where his ex-wife sat surrounded by some of the most powerful people in the city, clearly as comfortable in their company as if she belonged there, because, as he was about to discover, she did. The reception that followed would be remembered as one of the most extraordinary social reversals in the city's history. Marcus and Victoria made their grand entrance as husband and wife, but the attention in the room had shifted dramatically from the newlyweds to the quiet revolution taking place at Table 7. Senator Williams approached Sarah first. "Dr. Patterson, or should I say CEO Patterson, I've been following your company's work with great interest. The implications for pediatric medicine are remarkable." Marcus, who had been greeting guests nearby, froze. "CEO, Doctor, what was happening to his carefully orchestrated narrative?" "Thank you, Senator," Sarah replied graciously. "We're particularly excited about the clinical trials beginning next month. Children like my Emma will finally have treatment options we never imagined possible." Dr. Hartwell joined the conversation, beaming with pride. Sarah's breakthrough has attracted attention from research institutions worldwide. Harvard, MIT, and Johns Hopkins have all extended offers for her to head their new genetic research divisions. The circle around Sarah grew larger as more guests realized. They were in the presence of someone whose work would change medicine forever. Business cards were exchanged, collaboration opportunities discussed, and investment offers made. Meanwhile, Marcus found himself increasingly sidelined at his own wedding reception. The construction business that had seemed so impressive months ago suddenly felt small compared to the biotechnology revolution happening at the table where his ex-wife held court. Emma, Jake, and Lily moved through the reception with ease, charming adults who had initially wondered why children were present at such a formal event. They spoke confidently about their mother's work, their own interests in science, and their excitement about the new opportunities opening up for their family. "Mommy says we might move to Boston," Emma told Victoria's grandmother, who had been captivated by the articulate 6-year-old. "There's a hospital there that wants to test her medicine on kids like me." Patricia Ashford, who had questioned Marcus's decision to invite his ex-wife, found herself in an extended conversation with Sarah about the future of personalized medicine. "I had no idea you were Dr. Patterson," she admitted. "My granddaughter has been following your research for her master's thesis in biomedical engineering." As the evening progressed, Marcus watched his social triumph transform into something else entirely. The guests who had come to celebrate his marriage to Victoria were now networking with his ex-wife, discussing opportunities and collaborations that dwarfed anything in his professional experience. But the most profound moment came when Emma approached the head table during dinner. "Daddy," she said to Marcus, "Mommy says we can afford the special treatment now. The doctors think I might not need breathing machines anymore." Marcus looked at his daughter, really looked at her, and realized that while he had been focused on winning social status, Sarah had been focused on saving their child's life. The magnitude of his miscalculation hit him like a physical blow. Victoria, who had spent the evening watching her new husband grow increasingly uncomfortable, finally understood the full scope of what had happened. The woman Marcus had described as a failure had become one of the most successful biotechnology entrepreneurs in the country. The children he claimed would be better off with them were thriving under Sarah's guidance and inspiration. As the reception wound down, Sarah approached Marcus and Victoria's table. Her children flanked her, confident and happy in a way Marcus hadn't seen in years. "Thank you for inviting us," Sarah said simply. "It's been enlightening for all of us." Marcus struggled to find words. "Sarah, I had no idea. Your company, your research—" "I know," she replied gently. "You saw what you expected to see. But people change, Marcus. Dreams don't die just because someone says they should." She paused, looking around the elegant ballroom. "This is beautiful, truly. But you know what's more beautiful? Emma sleeping through the night without coughing. Jake reading medical journals because he wants to help other kids like his sister. Lily drawing pictures of the laboratory where Mommy works to help children get better." Dr. Hartwell appeared at Sarah's side, ready to escort her to the waiting limousine. "The car is ready, Dr. Patterson. We have an early morning meeting with the FDA review board." As Sarah prepared to leave with her children, she turned back to Marcus one final time. "I hope you find happiness in your new life. I really do. But I want you to understand something. Success isn't about proving you're better than someone else. It's about becoming the person your children need you to be." The limousines pulled away from the country club, carrying Sarah and her children toward a future brighter than Marcus had ever imagined possible. Inside the reception hall, the remaining guests continued to buzz about the evening's unexpected revelation. Victoria's father, Richard Ashford, approached Marcus as the celebration began winding down. "Son," he said thoughtfully, "I think you may have underestimated your ex-wife rather significantly." Marcus nodded, unable to speak. He had invited Sarah to his wedding to show her what she'd lost. Instead, she had shown him what he'd thrown away. 6 months later, Genetic Hope Solutions announced successful Phase 2 clinical trials for its cystic fibrosis treatment. Sarah's picture appeared on the cover of Time magazine under the headline, "The Janitor Who Changed Medicine." Emma's breathing had improved dramatically, and the family had moved to Boston, where Sarah headed a new research institute dedicated to pediatric genetic diseases. Marcus and Victoria's marriage lasted 14 months. The foundation of their relationship, his desire for social status and her attraction to successful men, crumbled when they realized that true success couldn't be measured by wedding venues or guest lists, but by the lives you touched and the legacy you left behind. The children, now thriving in Boston's excellent schools, maintained a relationship with their father, but they spoke with pride about their mother's work and the difference she was making in the world. Marcus began attending parenting classes and therapy, slowly learning to be the father his children deserved, rather than the man he thought would impress others. Years later, when asked about that wedding night, Sarah would simply smile and say, "Sometimes the greatest gift someone can give you is underestimating you. It removes all pressure to prove anything except to yourself." The janitor who had once cleaned laboratories at night had become the scientist whose work lit up operating rooms around the world, giving hope to families facing impossible diagnoses and proving that dreams deferred are never dreams denied. In your life, who have you underestimated? What dreams are you allowing others to define as impossible? Sometimes the greatest victories begin with the courage to prove wrong those who count you out, not for revenge, but for the pure joy of becoming who you were always meant to be.